With the conclusion of the ship panel at CitizenCon 2952, we were taken through a history of spaceflight in the Star Citizen universe. From the very latest Mirai ships to the earliest commercially available ship, the RSI Zeus, released in the mid-2130s. As a follow-up to this iconic ship of the past, CIG has announced the brand new RSI Zeus Mk II. In fact, they've launched 3 of them. Wait, what's that? There might have been 4? Hello folks, Space Tech here, and welcome to a first look and buyer's guide for the RSI Zeus ES, MR, and CL. I'll also be talking about a potential 4th or perhaps secret version of this ship. I will point out, however, that these ships are in concept, and of course are always subject to change over time. That being said, CIG has mentioned that the Zeus is in white box, as well as their intention to launch the Zeus within the next 12 months. To help you decide if you should pick one up, I'll be diving into the differences between the variants, as well as comparing them to their closest competitors, all to help you choose, should you buy the RSI Zeus Mk II. While the Crusader Spirit series just launched, I will say that their reign as the most beautiful ships in the verse will come to a short end as soon as these 3 incredible looking ships are in game. Here is what all 3 Zeus have in common. They have a length of around 46 meters, width of around 34, and a height of 8. The best comparison for all of that is probably the recently released Spirit A1. The Spirit is 2 meters longer, 2 meters taller, and a whopping 10 meters wider. All in all, this ship is a fair bit smaller in footprint than the Spirit series. Keep this in mind as it'll be useful in our comparisons later. They also all have 2 fixed size 4 pilot-controlled weapons. The pilot also has access to 2 size 4 missile racks, but they've been listed as custom. That, combined with this image here with what looks to be a missile rack in the back, tells me it may be similar to missile racks in the RSI Scorpius, in that the rack is part of the body of the ship. If this is the case, you will not be able to swap out the missiles for ones of a different size. Finally, all 3 variants have a size 3 remote turret on the bottom of the ship. This would give a co-pilot access to 2 size 2 weapons. So how do the variants differ, and how do they stack up against their competition? Starting off with the ES. The Essential or Explorer version comes in a familiar white coating at a concept price of $135 war bond and $150 with store credit. As the version meant for exploring, the ES comes with quite a few upgraded components compared to its sister variants. The first of those is a size 3 radar. Compare that to the size 2 radar on the other 2. It comes with a size 3 fuel tank compared to 2 size 2 fuel tanks on the other ships. Finally, it also has 4 size 2 shields compared to 3. An extra size 2 shield today will grant it about 10,000 more shield HP when compared to the other variants. For context on the radar and fuel tank, a size up in any component is several times as good as the one below it. This is true when it comes to shields, power plants, and coolers already in the game today. With that in mind, I wouldn't be surprised if the ES ends up with a fuel tank almost twice the size of the other 2 variants, and obviously with a much more powerful radar to help you scan your surroundings for the treasures buried in space. This brings us to the internals of the ES. Starting in the front, we have a cockpit very reminiscent to the Mantis or the Scorpius. From here, and what we've seen in the other new RSI ships, we can likely expect fairly good visibility, especially if those struts don't get in the way too much in the 4 corners. This cockpit is likely also going to be where you can control the bottom turret. Moving back, we have 3 suit lockers as well as a docking collar. This brings us to the component room, as well as one of the entrances of the Zeus, a ladder. Unlike Crusader ships like the MSR or the new Spirit series, RSI understands that there is a value in being able to enter your ship without also allowing bystanders free access to your ship. The position of this ladder also means that it should be much faster to get from the ground to your pilot's seat, in case you ever need to make a quick exit. Behind this, we have crew habitation, which will likely have 3 beds, as well as a kitchen and a small recreation area. Finally, we have the cargo hold that holds 32 SCU. CIG does mention that the ES will be able to carry a Tumbril Cyclone, but given the scale of the person that we have put in the hold, it's likely going to be able to hold more than one with enough adjustment. So who are the competitors for the Zeus ES? As an exploration ship, there aren't many other ships that fill a similar role. The primary competitors in the same price are the Constellation Aquila and the Freelancer Dur. The largest component difference, that in my opinion is the most important, is the size of the radars. The Zeus has a size 3 radar compared to size 2 on the competition. If the radar size differences are anything like other components, the difference could be that the Zeus is as much as 3 times as effective at the role. The Zeus also has slightly more cargo than the Dur, while being slightly larger. This size is what brings us to its last strength, and it's versus the Constellation. This is the fact that the Connie is classified as a large ship, versus the Dur and the Zeus, which are classified as medium ships. This is relevant for exploration, because jump points will limit the size of the ship that can go through them. This means that the Zeus will be able to go through certain jump points that just aren't usable for the constellation. As compensation though, the constellation comes with 3 times the cargo, while also carrying a snub ship to get to the hard-to-reach spaces in wrecks or asteroid fields. You also get access to a scanner turret on top of the Connie, which will allow you to equip different kinds of scanners to the hardpoints. Finally, you have the absurd amount of pilot-controlled DPS on the constellation. At the same price, we have the CL. This is the clipper or cargo version of the ship, which comes with a blue paint job with caution yellow painted in highlights all over it. To help the CL transport cargo and keep it safe from attackers, the hull of the CL comes with extra armor plating. Keep in mind that the ES had more shields compared to the armor on the CL, which should protect it even more from ships with smaller weapon sizes. You also get a tractor beam mounted to the back behind the ramp, which will allow you to load and unload cargo much faster than if you had to do it all by hand. Of course, they've then added much more thrust capacity to the bottom of the wings to help it with all of this added weight. The reason for all of this is the massive 128 SCU of cargo, many times what's available in the other variants. On the inside, we have an identical cockpit, suit locker, and component room. The habitation area, however, is much smaller. It looks as though the rec area has almost been removed, and one of the beds has been forced to be a bunk. Finally, we have the massive cargo hold. This space looks large enough to hold multiple Cyclones, Furies, P-72, Mules, and more. The only question is if the other metrics of the ramp will allow vehicles like the Fury or the RSI Ursa into the cargo hold at all. If I had to guess, some creative citizens will find a way, just maybe not in one piece. As an aside, let me talk about this because I know it will be asked. What about the Spirit C1? In short, the C1 is now useless in my eyes. Star Citizen has usually been pretty good at justifying the use case of one ship versus another, even across price classes. Unfortunately, with the C1, this just isn't the case. The Spirit C1 has a third of the cargo, a third of the shields, and is 10 meters wider than the Zeus CL. It also isn't as heavily armored if we were to believe what CIG says about the CL coming with extra armor. It supports fewer crew and does not come with a docking collar. The only thing going for it is having access to 4 size 3 pilots compared to 2 size 4 pilot weapons in the Zeus. It is possible that the maneuverability of the C1 is better than that of the Zeus, but that would be about it. Unfortunately, I think the C1 has been killed before it ever got to fly. So who are the competitors to the Zeus CL? In my opinion, the closest competitors are the Freelancer Max and the Constellation Taurus. At the bottom of the capacity table is the Freelancer Max, which comes with 122 SCU of cargo. Compare that to the 128 on the CL and 174 on the Taurus. The Freelancer Max is about 10 meters smaller in width and length when compared to the Zeus, while the Taurus is much longer and higher than both of them, while being slightly less wide. All 3 of these ships should be able to carry close to the same amount of vehicles. Of course, the Taurus does suffer in the same way as the Aquila by virtue of not being able to go through the same number of jump points. That being said, the Taurus does have a massive advantage in being able to carry shielded cargo in the back of it, as well as all of the incredible pilot DPS. Finally, that brings us to the most expensive variant of the 3, the Zeus MR. At $175, this is the Bounty Hunter variant, which comes with a gorgeous black paint with blue accents. You also get an extra size 3 turret on top of this ship, with its prize jewel, the quantum dampener and the EMP device mounted along the spine. Interestingly enough, this ship also has 3 size 2 shields like the CL, but none of the extra armor. What this means is that the combat-oriented version is actually going to be the least durable of the 3 variants, in exchange for more offense. Once again, you have an identical cockpit. On this ship, however, I think that each of the 2 co-pilots will get access to one of the remote turrets, with one of them also getting access to the QED and EMP device. You also have a component room and habitation area that is identical to the CL. Where it differs greatly is that the cargo room has been made significantly smaller. Instead, you have access to 2 more rooms, the first of which is a massive armory. In the image that was provided to us, I counted room for close to 30 weapons. While this is likely an exaggeration, I'd imagine there is no weapon that you won't be able to make fit into this room. The room across the hall from the armory, however, I am really not quite sure. It's possible that there is eventually going to be some suit lockers here as a way to change into heavy armor when needed, but let me know what you might think in the comments below. In the cargo room, you get a measly 16 SCU, half as much as the ES and a fraction of the CL. Some of that room has also been given up to hold prisoner pods, for when you have secured a bounty hunting target and are bringing them back to claim your bounty. So who are the competitors to the MR? First off, I'm not even going to dignify the RSI Scorpius Antares by comparing them completely. The Antares is worse in every single way. Other than being able to fit into the hangars of capital ships, there is no reason to get that thing. Its other competitors are the Cutlass Blue and the RSI Mantis. When it comes to the RSI Mantis, it is clear that the Zeus outclasses it with every component, but the Mantis is much smaller and will likely be able to sneak into places where the Zeus cannot. It can also be operated by only one person, a huge advantage over the Zeus, which needs at least 2 people to have its EMP and dampener active. Of course, the biggest difference is the fact that the Mantis also has a quantum interdiction device. This gives it the ability to set up traps for enemy ships and rip them straight out of quantum. Unfortunately, the Mantis will almost definitely need support from another ship to be able to do anything to the ship that it has trapped, since it has barely any combat ability. The quantum dampener on the MR, in comparison, can only prevent nearby ships from entering quantum travel, but you must be beside your target already. This is the same dampener that is available on the Cutlass Blue. Unfortunately, other than size, there is almost nothing going in favor of the Cutlass Blue. The MR is better gunned, has 3 times the shielding, an armory for FPS combat, and a kitchenette for extended flight time out in the verse. Once again, like the C1, I don't know why you would ever pick up a Cutlass Blue instead of the Zeus, especially at their respective prices. All of this is even ignoring the EMP capability of the MR as well, which is just a cherry on top. This brings us to the secret or removed version of the Zeus. This is the Zeus ST. We know this name by looking at the side of the ship, and where the rest of the Zeus had their variant name on the side, this one has ST written on it. An interesting difference about the ST versus other variants is that it is also physically different than the others. The rear fins have a different shape to them, as well as adding a spoiler. At first glance, I assumed that this may be a racing variant of the Zeus due to the aggressive styling. I then noticed that it also has a turret on top as well as the bottom, just like the MR variant, and no racing ship to date has added guns to it. After talking about it with some folks on the InfoRunners Discord, someone suggested the idea of the ST being a sort of sports version of the Zeus, similar to an M series for a BMW. In any case, I'm curious as to why this was left in the marketing for the Zeus, and whether or not we may get to see this variant announced sometime over the next 12 months. So who were these ships for? I think all of them serve their purpose very well from what we can tell so far. If you've ever found yourself interested in exploration, medium ship cargo, or bounty hunting with more than yourself as crew, you won't go wrong with these ships. That being said, things can change over the course of the next year, so the safest way to play this would be to purchase $5 to $10 CCUs from the most expensive ship under your desired ship. That way, you've locked in the price of the ship for when it goes to live and gets more expensive, but you can always melt that CCU in case it turns out not to be a ship that you're interested in. So tell me, will you be picking up any of the Zeus variants, and what do you think that the ST variant is all about? Please like and/or subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.